Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Terry James Gingras, and this is Dr. G's ADHD Chat show trying to make the world safe for ADHDers. I am a clinical psychologist and neuropsychologist with a solo private practice. I have been working with ADHD for an easy 40 years. I also am the parent of what is now an ADHD adult. And as I say almost every week, ADHD has changed a lot. We did not used to know what we were talking about. We had all these discussions and arguments about whether or not there really was such a thing as ADHD. And I managed to make it all the way through an American Psychological Association approved training program without ever once coming into contact with ADHD. That is just the state of things. And even when I was thinking that I kind of knew what was going on with my child, I had a terrible time getting a good evaluation. So basically, I did what I've been trained to do, which is basically, if I don't know a topic, I learn about it. I read journal articles. I took all kinds of courses, went to conferences, that sort of thing. Learning about, hello, Leslie. Glad you're here. Anyway, I learned as much as I could, and then obviously I started seeing a lot of patients with, well, maybe it wasn't obvious, but I elected to start seeing patients with ADHD. And over the years, developed some different kinds of strategies. The traditional treatment for ADHD has always been a behavior modification kind of program, which has a lot of shortcomings, actually. Basically, it's based on the most simplistic. You punish the behavior you don't want, you reward the behavior you do want. Well, that's fine, except if you're getting more that you don't want than that you do want, then it becomes real punitive. I remember I had one mother come to see me, and she very proudly reported that her child, her ADHD boy, was sleeping on a mattress on the floor in his bedroom without any toys, clothes, and didn't even have a door. And this was, because she kept punishing him every time he did something wrong. Now, I lost contact with that person a long time before we really got into much of a treatment program, so I do not know what happened with that young man, but I have serious concerns. Anything you do with an ADHDer, you've got to have the proper perspective. And honestly, sometimes I think strategic parenting is more about training the parents than it is anything to do with the kids. If you're an ADHD parent, you have to constantly keep in mind two things. One, this is a neurologic condition. It is not a behavior problem. It is not a psychological problem. It is a neurologic condition your child was born with, and it's throughout at least one side of the family. The heritability index for ADHD is like 85%. So if you have a child with ADHD, one side of the family or the other also has a lot of folks with ADHD. And they may or may not have ever been treated, but it's there. And you need to be aware that a neurologic condition doesn't mean they're being willful. It means that you're asking them to do a lot of stuff that's might not be hard for other kids, but is really hard for them. And so you have to keep aware of that. And the other thing you always have to keep in mind is, where do you want your kiddo to end up? When your young man or young boy is a man, or your young lady, or your young girl is a lady. Boy, I messed that up. Anyway, what do you want them to be like? What kinds of behaviors do you want to see in them? What kinds of beliefs do you want them to have? All those things. Those are more important than whether they make their bed, hang up their clothes, any of that stuff, okay? And so you've got to, and that's what, that's where the strategic part comes, is you're taking a long-term view and you're keeping in mind it's a neurologic condition. So if you do those two things, you're miles ahead of the game, okay? Because if all you're doing is looking for bad behavior to punish, I guarantee you'll find it. I guarantee you'll find it. But there's a problem. If you're the one who's always doing the punishing, how can you expect them to trust you? How can you expect them to go to you for advice? How do you expect them to be concerned about your opinion when it's always negative? Okay, and these are not things I'm making up. These are things I've observed over the years. Your child doesn't have a lot of fans in the world, okay? Teachers would rather not be there. Coaches would just as soon, unless they are superstar athletes, would just as soon not have to mess with them. The neighbors, you can go on and on and on. But in general, they don't get a lot of positive reinforcement. They don't get a lot of praise. And so strategic parenting is based on looking to the future. And that's why that's the title of the book. That's the title of the approach. And it's more than just positive, because there are programs out, positive parenting and that sort of stuff. Well, yeah, that's fine, but you got to have an end result. You got to have what you're looking to accomplish. And I think the strategic method is optimal, basically. It's the best I could come up with anyway. So what you're doing is first of all, you're paying attention to yourself, because a lot of how they react depends on how you react. And you got to watch out for yourself. I know. I was in the military. I got kind of used to 20-year-olds jumping when I said jump. Okay. When you have an ADHD kid at home, that is not likely to be the way it's going to happen. And you don't want to get all torqued off and red-faced and you better, and get your angry self out in the open all the time. That will not help with your ADHD child. Matter of fact, it'll make it worse. Because guess what? They learn more from watching you than they do from listening to you. So he's going to see that, or she's going to see that it's perfectly okay to have a temper tantrum if you're having temper tantrums. Okay, so, and then I'm going to do this for a few weeks in a row because it's kind of important. And let you know a little secret. In a month or two, we're going to be coming out with something else, some more training that I think you might be interested in. At least some of you will be interested in. So, strategic parenting means you're always keeping in mind what you want the future outcome to be, and you are always aware that this is a neurologic condition and that some of the things are just from frustration. The behavior that you can't stand is from the frustration of not being able to do what people want. Okay, it's too complicated, it's too frustrating, that sort of thing. So your job as a strategic parenter is to be more of a teacher, and be more concerned about the way your child thinks about him or herself. That's a vital part of the whole parenting thing anyway, but it's harder when you have an ADHD child. I will mention again the Lasoda principle. That's LASODA. It's a principle about what gets the best behavior out of humans and groups of humans. And basically they find that 4 positive comments for every critical comment is about the appropriate ratio. So think about your interactions with your child, with your ADHD. Or if you're an adult, think about what you got when you were a kid. Did you get 4 positive comments for every negative one? Bet you didn't. Okay? And that leaves problems for people. Okay? You ideally want a child that has a positive self-image, is self-confident, and is resilient. Resilient just means you can handle it when things don't turn out the way you hope they would. And if you are one of those ADHD entrepreneurs out there, you know how vital that is. Because one of the things, ADHDers are ideally suited to be entrepreneurs. They like the need for quick decisions. They like the risk. They like the freedom. They like the chance to be creative. But sometimes that being able to make quick decisions leads to impulsive decisions that end up backfiring. Sometimes they lead to great success, but sometimes you're going to have to deal with, oops, we screwed up this time. And if you are resilient, you'll look at it as, okay, this is a learning experience. We did this and it didn't work out, so what are we going to do next time? And that's the optimal way. I mean, that you do that, you keep going. You keep going after things, and and eventually, if you keep going, things will start to work out for you. I mean, we have all kinds of examples of entrepreneurs who have ADHD, and if you look at their histories, almost all of them have had some problems with failed businesses. Things didn't work out. They lost money. Things just weren't going well. But they had the resilience, they had the tenacity, they had the self-confidence to keep going and understanding or being pretty dang sure that if they kept going at it, they'd eventually succeed. We have lots of examples of that. And they have made some of the biggest changes in our lives that we're likely to ever see. It's amazing when you start looking at a list of famous people with ADHD as to how, and it's not all just musicians and performers. It's a lot of it is entrepreneurs. Okay, that's me for this week. I'm going to keep this up for a few weeks, the strategic parenting part of things, just because I think it's really important. Okay, catch me later, or leave a note. I forget where, down below, I think, and ask questions if you've got them, and you can reach my website is terrygingrassphd.com, and we will catch you next time. Okay? Think about this. This is important. Bye.